Welcome to the Rising Consciousness Show, 20 minutes of soulful insights and powerful tools to elevate your life experience and create with higher clarity, intention, and vision. I'm Tara Antler, intuitive healer and soul coach.
And I'm King Gabriel, spiritual teacher and practitioner. And we are the co-founders of Ascension Academy of Life,
a global center for spiritual growth, intuitive healing, and soul alignment.
Get ready to blast off. Welcome back. Welcome.
We're so excited to be here with you to have this really beautiful and powerful conversation about insight, intuition and imagination.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right on point, actually, because we have this amazing workshop coming up in June 20th.
Yeah.
That is Intuition Precision. We'll tell you more about it at the end of the podcast, but you know, it's a powerful conversation that's been buzzing in our field, awareness within our company and our clients. And so we thought, what better topic to bring forth than this tonight.
Yep.
We're recording this very late, actually. It's about 11:17 p.m. here right now while we're recording this. And
the after kids time, kids bedtime, right?
And so we're channeling the mystical evening energy for you. So hopefully you'll be able to receive that and take in all that goodness.
The energy of perfect nappiness.
Yes, exactly. Sleepiness.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Which is such a beautiful energy to enter into, actually, when you're wanting to receive clarity and intuitive guidance, because a lot of times we'll get the question, how do I tap into my intuition more strongly? How do I trust what I'm getting? How do I know that what I'm receiving is truly intuitive insight versus what am I making up in my mind? And I think one of the first places to start in that conversation is to actually drop into a more surrendered state.
Yeah, how deep are you?
Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be asleep or sleepwalking. And at the same time, it serves us and our intuitive abilities to soften and relax and surrender and find those moments where we're not so active in the mind and in the analytical. Because I don't know about you, but I sometimes find that when I'm so much in the analytical, the thinking, the doing, it almost is like a competitive energy or a different track to the intuitive flow that feels a lot more surrendered and soft and relaxed. And,
I feel that. And I have to say I feel that literally, because for me, it's exactly that. When the mind gets involved and I'm thinking or pondering something, it feels like it could go anywhere. I could imagine up something or something up, drum something up. Whereas intuition, if I just listen to what that really is, it's really that dive inside, that intuition, going inside for tuition, going inside for the teaching, the lesson, or the moment, the listening. And it's a feel. It's like if I can feel into it, when I really listen, I get accurate information, very, very accurate. And I think all of us have that guidance within, but it's about being able to drop in and recognize, where is that? Where is it that I'm really feeling that from? Where's the depth of that? Where do I make that connection? At what depth of awareness? What depth of listening? What depth of surrender, like Tara just said? And when we can just fall into that and get into that surrendered space, we find that it's easier for us to trust that guidance that comes, because it's not comparative or looking at something else to try to make sense of it. It's just, this is what it is. Here it is.
And you're not attempting to figure it out. We hear that a lot from clients too, where they'll say, I'm just trying to figure this out, or I got to figure this out. Once I figure this out, which automatically puts one in the analytical mind, the sifting and sorting, the thinking, which is a very different feeling and track than the and just surrendering again and allowing that divine wisdom to flow through.
And people that know this clearly would be people who are like songwriters and musicians and that sort of stuff, when you have that deeper listening. And when I say deeper, obviously it's a comparative term, but I mean that deep listening where you're not just listening with the human ears and trying to catch some song from outside. You're actually listening with your inner ear in a deep way where you're willing to catch a vibe, because there's songs playing in us all the time, right? You walk around on a daily basis and there might be a melody playing in you that you're unaware of, but when you finally listen in, you hear something beautiful and you're like, oh geez, I gotta catch that. I'm gonna catch that. And you write that down, or you hum it, or you do whatever you do. And that's your intuition at work right there, right? There's stuff playing in us, there are frequencies playing in us according to how relaxed, how calm, how connected to joy, to love, to these things we are. And it's like everyone has a melody, right? So are we willing to hear that inner music? Yeah.
And it's the same when you were talking, I was thinking about, you know, the times when you're sitting and you're busy, or you're doing something, or you're wanting to solve a problem, or you're wanting to get to that next thing, and you're like, what's that next step, or what's that next path along the journey, or do I go this way, or do I go that way, or do I bring this forward, or do I sit on that for a bit, do I go in this direction, do I go in that, you know, there's all these contemplative thoughts. And a lot of times when we actually just take a step away, right, it's like you said, the artist, or when you take a step away and you go for a walk, and all of a sudden, eureka!
It happens.
There's an answer. There's a solution.
Happens.
There's a something. And you're like, oh, that's amazing. You know, whereas you've been sitting there at the computer for hours
just trying to get it done, right?
to get this thing to come through. Where if you just actually take a pause and take a step away and go take a nap, or sit by a river, or listen to the trees, or connect to your breath, or
go
meditate.
take a relaxing shower. And in the shower, you know how many people have genius ideas in the shower and those sorts of things. The moment you let go and you relax, boom, everything just comes through, right?
And I think the reason why that's true and why it happens like that is because the active part of your mind, which is meant to run, the mind is built to run. It is like that machine that, you know, is computing all the time. What is happening? Oh, this is happening. This is what's going on. This is how I feel. And it is constantly computing and sending signals to the brain and to the body and everywhere, right? And when you're taking a shower, when you're taking a walk, that active part of your brain is still focused on something. So then all of a sudden you are in a state of surrender and meditation and so on, and the insights get to come through. Indeed. They get to drop in and drop down.
It's so true. That's how some of the meditations are done as well, that people would do, right? You know, you get into that repetitive mode of whatever it is and let the mind go handle its task. And while it's handling its task, all that goodness is just creeping in, seeping in for you to absorb, right? While the mind is not there to block all that beautiful information from flowing in. So sometimes you have to give that little mind a task. Right? And you know, there are many different ways to do that. Obviously, we're going to dive into that in our intuition precision conversation, and that is going to be amazing. Definitely, we're going to get into some of those thoroughly so that it can be a practice that you apply. But yeah, these are the things that we can do to allow ourselves to become more receptive. And of course, there are tests to see how well you can attune yourself as well. Reliable tests that you could go through to see bit by bit whether you're improving or not. That's another thing that most people don't look at, right? You want to be able to measure sometimes the capabilities that you're developing. Just like you're looking, if you go to the gym or something like that, and you start off living 5 pounds one day, you want to know that by week 10 or something, you're living like 10 pounds at least, right? Right? You don't want to know you're staying the same forever, right? So it's good sometimes to have those measures to continue to grow and develop that. And we're definitely going to go into that as well. Yeah.
Something that just popped up into my awareness as you were speaking, and this comes up every now and then when people want to expand their intuition, but they might be a little bit afraid. Because I was thinking that, you know, I'm like, whoa, what would happen if I expanded my intuition even more? Because my intuition's already really, really open and active. And immediately I felt a little sense of, like, it felt a little scary because, holy cow, like, what would I see? And I think that comes up naturally for a lot of people because they're like, does that mean I'm going to see walking dead people everywhere? Am I going to see ghosts? Am I going to
be an oracle?
Right? Am I going to be right? Am I going to be able to hear my partner's thoughts every waking moment? Am I, because that can be overwhelming to some people, right?
Is what you choose to do with that, right?
Well, and I think that's exactly the answer is that you may open to your next level and you still get to choose. This is one thing that I learned way back when I was working with clients when I first started. So this, you know, many years ago. And I remember seeing all sorts of things. I would see things in the body that weren't so great. And I was like, like, what is this? And other, you know, very intense, I'll just say very intense experiences that people had. And I remember talking to my higher self and spirit, and I said, you know, I love this gift that I have. And yet at the same time, I don't know if I want to see all that all the time because
excuse me, higher self, can we dial it back a little bit,
that's
please?
what I did. And that's what I did. And they said you actually
Yeah.
can. You can dial it up or
Holy
dial it
smokes.
down.
Yeah.
Just like on, the
Yeah.
old stereos
Yeah.
where you have like the equalizers. And they said you can dial certain pieces
Yeah.
up and down. You get
Yeah.
to choose. So I said, okay, great. I choose to
I
still
choose
see.
around a 7, a 6.5,
Right.
somewhere there. You know?
No, I was still at 10. I was like, I still want to see.
Yeah.
And what I want to see, though, is less of the density
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
shadow and the
Gotcha.
traumas and the pains and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to be so focused there because I want to see
Yes.
the highest path. I want to see the light within this person. I want to see how can I help them attune to that higher path. How can I help them
Certainly.
really live and create heaven and bliss on earth? And all of a sudden I started to see that.
Yeah.
So you do have say. So even if you want your intuition to open and you're like, I don't know if I want to see all that, you get to choose. You get to
Yes.
choose what you get to see, when you get to see it. And because I think that's another fear that comes up for people too, because they're like, does that mean that when I'm in the shower, people are gonna be
Show
coming
up
and
in my
talking to
face.
me, No, you get to say.
No,
You get to
no,
say.
you're gonna be
You get
alright.
to say.
Yeah. So
And you get to have choice over what time of the day as well. That's the one thing that I've found even in our classes.
Yes.
When you get into a regular routine of, let's say I'm set aside this time at 3 p.m. every day to just sit and connect and commune with source, with creator, with my higher self.
Yeah.
You start this positive pattern within yourself that at 3 p.m. that time of the day, that's go time.
Yeah.
And everything gets to open and it's your call. And then the rest of the time you're like, I still have it open and maybe not full.
Yeah.
Full.
You dial
right?
it back a bit, right? Yeah. So tell us some stories about what happened with your intuition in life, like when you listened and when you didn't listen, because I know I have moments like that as well. But
oh gosh, there's so many, and I find that in the times that I really listened, miraculous things occurred.
Yeah.
And so this is how I knew also that my intuition, what I was picking up on, was of a higher path and a higher clarity and a higher frequency, because when I listened from that space, I always felt uplifted. I always felt there was something amazing that came next, whether it was intersecting with the perfect client, whether it was traveling to LA and us intersecting and all the miraculous things that transpired from that, whether it was knowing when we were going to have babies, right? Knowing that it was Aria dropping down. Like there's so many, I have so many examples of times when I listened. I was saying this to our students tonight that, knowing when I wrote the second book that the first book that I published, the Healing Manual, I got this intuitive rush. Go sit, be on the houseboat, write for 5 days. You will write a book in 5 days. I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. Like my intellectual mind was like, I don't think so. But if I wouldn't have listened to that, I probably would have been like, dang, I missed that flow. And sure enough, I committed to it. And I said, you know what? This is what I'm getting. Mom and Dad, are there any houseboats sitting at the dock right now? Yes, there are. Great. Can I come home? And I need to write. And every day I went down and 5 days, there it was. So there's so many times, like when I listen, there's always something amazing and miraculous. There's an up-leveling, there's an expansion. The times that I didn't listen to my intuition, I was always like, dang, like why didn't I listen? I could have saved myself so much time, heartache, pain, suffering, missteps, and then there was always like a fumble, or there was always like, oh no, I gotta go down the bumpy path for another 2 months or something, or 2 weeks, whatever it was. Yeah. What about you?
That's amazing. For me, I believe I've very much lived an intuition-led life, an intuitively led life. I got like the visions when I was young of like what type of person I was gonna be with and how I was gonna grow up and all of these different things, like what I was gonna do in a sense. The one time that stands out the most though was that letter that I wrote to myself some years ago. I mean, there are many, many incidents, but this one was so clear. I wrote a letter on this thing called Future Self, and some of you might know it, but it's this thing where you write to yourself in like 5 years, right? And then 5 years later, the email will be sent to your inbox. So then you open it and you see. So I happened to miss the 5-year mark, right? Because I didn't see the email. It went to my spam or whatever. But then finally the other day, 10 years later or something, I finally opened it and looked. And guess what I said to myself? I said, hey, if you and Tara are not together, get back together. You guys are meant to be together. Okay, so figure that out. Right? Figure that out. That's what I said to myself. And I also said, and say hi to the twins. I said that. It's in the letter. And that was 10 years ago. I said that to myself directly. Say hi to them, right? And well, they're here, right? They're here. They're living. They're living beings running around with us right now. So, I mean, you could say, well, oh, that was just chance. He just had an inkling. No, it wasn't chance. It happened. And I have it documented from 10 years ago. So it's not like some kind of chance thing, right? So, when you listen to intuition and you do follow and you really trust that and you're willing to assert yourself in that, and not assert yourself in an egotistical way, but assert yourself as in you trust the guidance that comes through, then certain things are sort of known. Certain things are known for us, right? And whether we're willing to accept it or not is up to us. Yeah.
And I love that you bring this up about trust because, and that's incredible. When Gabriel read the message to me, we were both like, whoa. I'm like, no way. I'm like, you didn't really say that to yourself.
I wrote that to myself. I did.
And, and this conversation of trust comes up a lot. How do I know? How can I trust what I'm getting? Like, is it true? Is it real? Am I making this up in my head? That takes practice. This is where I would say that trust, just like Gabriel was talking about, strengthening the amount of weights that you lift. Trusting your intuition and trusting what you get, it really is a practice. And I would say that it just takes a little something to be able to practice it, to lean into that, to maybe be in a community. I mean, I was in a channeling circle for 2 years to strengthen my ability to channel, and more than that, because I was already channeling. I just needed to build up my confidence, and I needed to be able to trust that what I was getting was accurate. So I invested in that to do that. I invested in a lot of intuition training. And that's why I think it's so powerful and important that we do this with our clients as well in our Thrive 365 program, because when Gabriel and I looked at how do we get people to a place to thrive in relationships, in their health, in their well-being, in their finances, all around, in their families, in their business, intuition was 100% a part of it. Because we both have had so many intuitive experiences, and we're like, every single time we listened to our intuition, every single time we leaned into that realm, life got better. Things started to thrive more. There was an expansion moment that happened. So let's help people cultivate that and practice their intuition and thrive in their intuitive gifts so that they can use those intuitive gifts in every single area of their life. And it does take practice. It takes being in a community where you can be in a safe space to be able to practice those intuitive gifts and open up. It takes the right tools as well, the right skills and tools to be able to say, okay, I'm going to try this out and I'm going to do that, and let's see what the result is. And then
you have to have a open mind to experimentation as well, right? Because it's something that's relatively, it's not new, but it's not like there's a common testing for this or something, except for a few that we do know of. And you want to be willing to have an open mind to it, the possibility of it, not be all closed-minded and be like, well, no, that doesn't exist. That's just people's imagination there. Well, if your imagination is drumming up real events, then, you got to look at that. It's worth looking at.
Exactly. And when you have that safe space to practice and play and test things out and have other people to talk to as well, to be like, whoa, that's what you got. Or sometimes this will happen when we're teaching. Clients will be like, oh my God, I got that too. Oh my gosh, I got that too. Oh my gosh, I saw that too. And everybody sees the same thing, which is so validating. And that, I think validation is okay in those ways, because
it reinforces
it. One of the most, I would say, profound, intuitive, trusting moments was when I was in one of the colleges that I was studying all these different beautiful modalities, and I got put in a group of 3. And so everybody else was just paired up 1-to-1. And I was in a group of 3. And we were doing a scan of the body. And so one person was receiving and 2 of us were doing the scan and the reading. And it was more for like medical intuition. And so we're scanning the body and we're in this meditative state. And she's scanning and I'm scanning, the other one's receiving. And we were in there maybe 10, 15 minutes. And at the end, we said, okay, the teacher said, okay, now share what you got. And so I started sharing, and the girl who was also reading and scanning, she's like, oh my gosh, she goes, I'm going to finish your sentence. And she would say, and we saw and got the exact same thing. Like right down to the woman's right knee and what had happened to her right knee, to vertebrae that had been shifted, to all sorts of things. We both saw it, and we were literally finishing each other's sentences, and we had never... Like, it's not like we were reading her, client intake form.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like, we had no idea. And the woman on the other side, she was floored. She's like, oh, and it was so validating in that moment because being in that trio was really, really powerful because sometimes we get stuff and we're like, oh,
you
come
question
on.
it, you're like, oh no,
You're
that's
like,
just my
come
imagination.
on. Did I make that up? I'm making that up, right? But when you have a safe space to be able to talk to somebody about it and you're like, hey, I saw like on your right knee and this is what it looked like and this is what happened, and the person across is like jaw dropping, and they're like, that's exactly
what happened.
You're like, oh my God. It's like you give yourself a nice little pat on the back because this is a very etheric thing. It's a very surreal thing that we're talking about. It's not like manifestation where you're like, okay, I want to create XYZ, and then XYZ shows up and you're like, yay, there's the physical material, you know, right before your eyes.
Yes. And that's huge because the strengthening of the belief in it, the strengthening of the practice in it lets you trust more fully in being able to use it as a tool.
Totally.
Right? So it's definitely something good to be able to calibrate it in that way. You know, you work with it, you experiment with it, you feel where it's coming from, like we're speaking about, and then you're able to use it reliably. Yeah. That's what we like to have. Yeah.
So I would say to wrap, life guided by intuition is one of the most amazing, miraculous, beautiful things that one can do for themselves.
Certainly. I agree.
And I feel like that's why we make it such a foundational piece of everything that we teach. Yes. And if you want to go further on this conversation, feel free to come and join us in the Light Ascension Collective, which is our Facebook group. Yep. And the workshop is going to be happening June 20th to the 24th, 2022. Yeah. If you're listening to this and it's way past that date, still come and check us out because we do this intuition workshop once or twice a year. Yes. And we are always doing live videos. If you are curious and you're like, I already want to go and develop my intuition, reach out to us. Get in touch with us because you can always come into Thrive 365 as well. And it's an amazing community. And that is a place where we go a lot deeper in the intuition conversation.
Yep, certainly.
Awesome. So I would say for today, practice, play. If you have even one tool to kickstart the intuition, I would say, create space. Create space in your mind, create space in your body. Just like we started the conversation with, just go take a walk, take a step away from whatever you're trying to figure out or sort through. Just take a pause, go create space for yourself and just see whatever wants to pop into your awareness, allow it in, and then take action or follow through on whatever it is that you received, because that'll help build your confidence and your trust too.
Yep, and come join us, definitely. Barbara, Sue, Cynthia, Ellie, Talia, come on, join us. We'll see you there. Have a beautiful one.
Have a great day.
Love you guys. Ciao.
Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of the Rising Consciousness Show. For more high vibrational tips, tools, meditations, conversations, and ascension, join us over in our free Facebook group. All you have to do is go to www.facebook.com/groups/Light Ascension Collective. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Rising Consciousness. Yeah.
Woo!
Woo!